Welcome back to Crime Time, Inc. Today, we're going to be looking at the Edinburgh and Leith Outrages of 1881.
Okay.
And this is a series of events that really does feel like something out of the Wild West,
Right.
but happened right here in Scotland.
Yeah.
We have a 2021 article from the Edinburgh Reporter, which discusses a Leith police history book and some excerpts from a website detailing the outrages in Edinburgh and Leith, 1881. What strikes me right off the bat is that in 1881, Edinburgh and Leith were separate towns. Leith was this bustling port with its own police force established in 1859.
That's important context.
Yeah.
Public trust in formal policing was still developing across the UK at that time.
Right.
So it wasn't as ingrained in society as it is today.
It definitely adds another layer to the story.
Yeah.
So into this world walk our main players.
Yeah.
James Hardnett, Alfred Seymour, and Tom Harrison.
Okay.
3 Australian sailors who worked their passage to London. What's interesting is that the captain confiscated their English bulldog revolvers during the voyage,
Oh.
but returned them upon arrival.
Wow.
Why do that unless you're worried about them causing trouble?
It's a curious detail, isn't it? Almost like a warning sign that was ignored.
For sure.
Yeah.
So Hardnett and Seymour traveled to Edinburgh, leaving Harrison behind in London.
Okay.
Their goal, according to later testimony, was to rob a bank.
Mm-hmm.
But their first attempt near Dean Park Farm on February 4th, 1881, was a flop.
Oh.
They tried to rob a mason named Alexander Anderson, but he had no money on him.
Right.
And it seems that initial failure might have triggered a cascade of increasingly desperate and violent acts. Just minutes later, they targeted Robert Veitch, a commercial traveler who fought back. He even broke his umbrella on one of them.
Wow.
But then Robert, his father William, and his sister Emily gave chase, and the criminals actually fired on them.
Oh my goodness.
Robert was hit in the cheek and ear, Emily in the thigh and jaw. William was incredibly lucky the bullets lodged in his coat, but he wasn't hurt.
It's amazing he escaped injury.
Yeah.
It really highlights the unpredictable nature of this crime spree.
Right.
They go from a failed robbery attempt to shooting at unarmed civilians in a matter of minutes.
And later that same evening, they rob James Stewart Dick and Marion McLaren Swan near Colbridge. They pistol-whipped Dick for just 4 shillings and a hat.
Ah, wow.
It's a bizarre contrast.
Yeah.
They had this ambitious plan to rob a bank,
Right.
yet their actual gains were incredibly meager.
It is strange.
What are your thoughts on this shift from ambition to seemingly desperate acts?
It does make you wonder about their psychological state.
Yeah.
Did the initial failure rattle them? Were they prone to impulsive violence?
It's possible.
Yeah.
Their actions become increasingly erratic. They then move their operation to Leith,
Right.
attempting to rob a baker's van driver around 9:30 p.m. on Bonington Road.
Okay.
Fortunately, they were scared off by a woman who shouted at them, so their bad luck continued.
Right.
But the night was far from over. Around 11:30 p.m., Leith police sergeants Donald Reed and William Arnott spot the two acting suspiciously near the customs house.
And this is where things take a truly dangerous turn. Initially, the criminals cooperate with the sergeants,
Okay.
but then they suddenly shoot them. Sergeant Reed was shot in the back and head, Sergeant Arnott in the face and neck.
It's hard to believe how quickly this escalated. Imagine the chaos of that moment.
Yeah,
Gunshots ringing out, whistles blowing.
absolutely.
The commotion alerted other officers, and despite being unarmed, they bravely joined the chase.
Wow.
Officers John Cameron, Alexander Nicholson, George Burst, and Thomas McConville all gave pursuit.
That's brave.
It's important to remember that in those days, police officers in many places didn't routinely carry firearms. I find that incredible.
Right.
They were facing armed criminals without any protection themselves. The sources say the criminals were firing wildly, trying to shoot both themselves and the pursuing officers.
That's wild.
It must have been terrifying for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
How did it finally end?
One of the criminals, cornered by P.C. McConville, tragically shot himself.
Oh, wow.
The other, after several attempts to do the same, was finally apprehended by P.C. Burse.
So 1 dead, 1 in custody.
Yeah.
A dramatic end to a night of violence that began with a simple plan to rob a bank.
Yes, and the story takes another turn when the surviving criminal identifies himself as James Grant and the dead man as William Smith, a.k.a. Alfred Seymour.
Okay.
It turned out Grant was also an alias, and the real James Hardnett was still out there somewhere.
Wow, so many fake names.
I know.
They were clearly trying to conceal their identities.
It was common for criminals at the time, particularly those involved in serious crimes.
Right.
They wanted to make it harder for the authorities to track them.
Yeah.
But despite their efforts, the truth eventually came out. What's fascinating is how the public responded to these events.
Yeah, from what we've discussed so far, this must have been absolutely shocking for the people of Edinburgh and Leith.
Definitely.
It must have been terrifying for people to realize this level of violence could erupt in their community. How did the public react to the police?
Right.
Especially given that trust in law enforcement was still developing.
There was an outpouring of support and admiration.
Okay.
People saw these officers risk their lives,
Right.
unarmed, to protect their community.
Yeah.
The fact that they pursued armed criminals without hesitation really solidified public trust in the police force.
It seems like a real turning point in the relationship between the police and the community.
Absolutely. The public really rallied around their protectors.
Yeah.
And remember that fund that was established to reward the officers?
Right.
It quickly reached over £250.
Wow.
And that was in 1881.
Over 200 people contributed to that fund, and from all walks of life. It really demonstrates the depth of gratitude people felt towards these officers.
The silver medals they received were a tangible symbol of their heroism.
Right.
And I'm sure they became treasured family heirlooms,
Yeah.
passed down through generations.
But what about Grant, the surviving criminal?
Okay.
What happened to him after the trial?
Well, he was sentenced to 14 years of penal servitude.
That's a hefty sentence.
Yeah.
Even for today's standards.
Yeah.
Where did he serve his time?
He started at Calton Prison in Edinburgh,
Okay.
but was later transferred to various prisons in England,
Oh,
ultimately ending up in Dartmoor,
right.
a notoriously tough prison.
He was released in 1894 after serving his full sentence,
Hmm.
but the records are sparse about what happened to him afterwards.
We know a charity helped him find work
Okay.
and rebuild his life,
Right.
but beyond that, his fate remains a mystery.
Did he manage to turn his life around, or did he fall back into old habits?
It's a fascinating question with no easy answers.
It's almost like he disappears into the shadows of history.
Yeah.
Speaking of unanswered questions,
Right.
what about that third Australian sailor, Tom Harrison,
Yeah,
the one who didn't come to Edinburgh?
right.
Did he ever show up?
That's the big enigma of this case.
Ah.
Did he deliberately stay away? Was he involved in other crimes? We simply don't know.
Right.
It's like a ghost in this story.
It really adds another layer of intrigue to the whole affair.
Yeah.
He could have been a key player, the mastermind behind it all.
Right.
Or maybe he simply got cold feet and decided to stay out of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Without more information, his role in the Edinburgh and Leith outrages remains a mystery.
Looking back at this whole story, what strikes me is the stark contrast between the criminals' initial ambition
Yeah.
and the reality of their actions.
Right.
They set out to rob a bank, but ended up with practically nothing.
It's almost comical, isn't it?
It is.
All that risk for a few shillings in a hat.
It really highlights how crime, even when planned, often doesn't go as expected.
Right.
There's always an element of chance, of human error, that can derail even the most meticulous plans. And in this case, those errors led to a tragic loss of life,
Right.
injuries, and years of imprisonment.
Yeah.
It's a sobering reminder of the potential consequences of criminal actions.
It is.
But beyond the legal repercussions, there's a psychological aspect to this story that I find fascinating.
Okay.
These weren't hardened criminals,
Right.
at least not initially.
Right.
They were sailors who made some terrible decisions.
You have to wonder what led them down this path.
I do.
Was it desperation, greed,
Right.
or maybe a misguided sense of adventure?
Whatever the reason, their choices had devastating consequences.
Yeah.
Not only for themselves, but also for their victims and the community at large.
Of course.
And on the flip side, you have these officers who go from being figures of some distrust to local heroes.
Right.
Their bravery completely changed public perception.
It's a testament to the impact that courage and selflessness can have.
Yeah.
They didn't hesitate to confront danger even when unarmed,
Right.
and they ultimately made their community safer.
What aspects of this case stand out to you the most?
I think for me, it's the incredible bravery of the officers,
Yeah,
particularly those who chased after the gunmen knowing they were unarmed.
right.
It's a powerful reminder that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary acts of courage.
And don't forget the public response.
Oh, yeah.
That outpouring of support and gratitude highlights the profound impact that these officers had on their community.
It's heartening to see how a community can rally around those who protect and serve them,
Yeah.
especially during such a tumultuous time.
The story of the Edinburgh and Leith outrages is a potent reminder of the complexities of human nature.
Yeah.
We see the darkness of criminal acts, but also the brilliant light of human courage.
Absolutely.
We've unpacked this crime spree quite thoroughly.
Right.
We've examined the motives, the chaos, and the bravery that unfolded during those events. Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's the enduring power of courage.
Okay.
These officers chose to act in the face of danger.
Mm-hmm.
Their actions not only saved lives,
Right.
but also inspired the community
Yeah.
and ultimately contributed to making Leith a safer place.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have the capacity for courage.
Yeah.
And that even small acts of bravery can have a ripple effect.
That's a wonderful sentiment.
Yeah.
The Edinburgh and Leith outrages, though, a story from another time, reminds us that human nature,
Right.
both good and bad, can have a lasting impact.
Absolutely.
What about those officers who were injured during the chase? It's remarkable to think they not only survived, but continued to serve their community after such a traumatic event.
Yeah.
What were their stories?
It's a testament to their resilience. Sergeant Reed, who was shot in the head, thankfully recovered
Wow.
and continued his service in the police force.
Right. It makes you wonder about the mental and physical toll such an experience must have taken.
It's hard to imagine facing that kind of danger
Right.
and then returning to the same job.
Absolutely. But it speaks to their dedication and strength of character.
Yeah.
Sergeant Arnott's injuries were more severe. He suffered nerve damage and partial paralysis.
Oh, wow.
But even that didn't deter him.
Right.
He later returned to work,
Wow.
though in a more administrative role.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
To overcome those challenges and still choose to serve the community is truly remarkable.
it is.
It's a powerful reminder of the human capacity to persevere.
Right.
What about P.C. Burse, the officer who apprehended Grant?
Yeah.
He must have been quite a character.
He was, from what I've gathered.
Yeah.
Census records show he was born in 1847 in Dufftown, a village known for its whiskey.
Quite a change of pace from the quiet countryside to the bustling port of Leith.
Yeah.
What do we know about his time in the force?
He joined the Leithburg police sometime before 1881 and quickly proved himself a capable officer.
Right.
And then, of course, came that fateful night that would forever change his life and make him a local hero.
Can you imagine the adrenaline,
Oh,
the
yeah.
fear,
Yeah.
chasing an armed criminal through the dark streets of Leith?
It must have been terrifying,
Yeah.
but he didn't back down. He
Right?
pursued Grant, relentlessly eventually apprehending him when his gun misfired.
Wow.
What a moment of relief that must have been.
Right.
Not just for P.C. Burse, but for the entire community.
I bet they hailed him as a hero.
Yeah.
Did he stay on with the police force after the events of 1881?
He did.
Okay.
He continued to serve the community for many years.
That's inspiring.
It is.
It shows that he didn't let that one night define his entire career. It speaks volumes about his character and his commitment to his duty.
Definitely.
So all 6 officers involved in that chase not only survived that night,
Right.
but also continued to contribute to their community.
Yeah.
That's a powerful statement about their resilience and dedication.
Their actions undoubtedly inspired countless others
Yeah.
and showed the true meaning of courage and selflessness.
Right.
They left behind a legacy that continues to resonate in the history of Leith.
This whole case, the Edinburgh and Leith outrages, is a fascinating glimpse into another era.
It is.
It's a story of crime and punishment, of fear and bravery,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately a story of community.
Yeah.
We see the darker aspects of human nature, but also the inspiring courage of those who stood against it.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that history is filled with these captivating stories just waiting to be discovered.
And who knows what other mysteries are still out there,
Right.
waiting to be unraveled.
The Edinburgh and Leith outrages certainly captured the imagination of a nation, didn't it?
It did.
It showed us the unpredictable nature of crime and the unwavering bravery of those who fought against it. I'm sure Tom in particular will have an in-depth knowledge of this case, and he and Simon will discuss this and all of this week's other cases in their weekly review show on Sunday. But in the meantime, tune in tomorrow for another great true crime episode.